Millionaire pretends to be broke to test his poor fiancée, but what she did next shocked everyone and changed everything in ways no one could have predicted. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell us, what city are you watching from right now? Go ahead and share that with us, and then sit back, relax, and enjoy the tale, everyone. It's one that's full of twists, turns, heartbreak, and ultimately a beautiful redemption that will leave you reflecting on the true meaning of love and trust. Lucas was carefully driving down the bumpy dirt road that wound its way to the Oliveira family's modest farm, the tires kicking up small clouds of dust with every turn. At 35 years old, he had already built an impressive business empire back in the bustling city of Chicago, one that very few people could ever hope to rival in terms of scale and success. His tech company, known as Summit Innovations, was valued in the billions, bringing him immense wealth, power, and influence. Yet despite all that material success and the luxuries it afforded him, no amount of money in the world could fill the deep, lingering emptiness that had plagued his heart for so many long, lonely years. That is, until he met Gabriella, the woman who had unexpectedly turned his world upside down and given him a glimmer of hope for something real and meaningful. It had been just 6 months ago when he first encountered her during a routine trip to this quiet, unassuming small town where he was scouting out potential land to expand his ever-growing business operations and secure even more profitable ventures. That's when he spotted her for the very first time, standing behind a simple wooden stall at the local farmer's market, selling her delicious homemade pies with a genuine warmth and enthusiasm that immediately caught his eye and drew him in like a moth to a flame. Gabriella Oliveira, with her radiant, welcoming smile that could light up the gloomiest of days, and those bright, sparkling eyes that seemed to dance with passion whenever she talked about her lifelong dream of becoming a professional chef someday. She was diligently studying culinary arts at a nearby community college, working tirelessly day in and day out to make ends meet, and paying her way through school with sheer determination, grit, and an unyielding spirit that inspired everyone around her. Lucas couldn't help but smile to himself as he recalled that fateful day when he had pretended to be nothing more than a casual visitor, just someone passing through the town who was interested in buying one of her freshly baked pies to satisfy a sudden craving. They ended up chatting for hours that afternoon, losing track of time as they shared stories, laughed at each other's jokes, and connected on a level that felt surprisingly deep and authentic. He found himself coming back the very next day, and then the day after that, drawn to her like a magnet, until finally he mustered up the courage to ask her out on a proper dinner date, hoping it would be the start of something special. "Do you really think she loves you for who you are?" The skeptical voice of his lawyer and closest friend, Marcos, suddenly echoed in his mind once again, pulling him back to the present moment and stirring up doubts he had tried to suppress. Or is it just for what you have? The money, the status, the lifestyle? That nagging question had been haunting Lucas for weeks now, refusing to let him rest easy or fully embrace the happiness he felt with Gabriella. His ex-fiancée, Vanessa, had shattered his heart into 1,000 pieces years earlier when he discovered, in the most painful way possible, that she had only been with him for his vast wealth and the glamorous life it provided, not for the man he truly was beneath it all. Ever since that devastating betrayal, Lucas had erected thick, impenetrable walls around his heart, making it nearly impossible for him to trust any woman who came into his life, especially one who might have ulterior motives hidden behind a charming facade. But Gabriella, she seemed so different from all the others he had known, simple in her ways, honest to a fault, and incredibly hard-working, with a humility that grounded her. She lived on the family farm with her widowed father Miguel, a man of quiet strength and wisdom, and her 2 older sisters, Anna and Clara, who were always there for each other through thick and thin, forming a close-knit family unit bound by strong, unwavering values, deep-rooted traditions, and an unbreakable bond of love and support. But was it all genuine, or could it possibly be just a clever facade designed to ensnare him? Lucas pondered this deeply as he pulled his car over and parked it a good distance away from the farm, not wanting to draw any unnecessary attention or raise suspicions with his luxury vehicle. He quickly changed out of his expensive tailored suit into some plain, simple clothes that he always kept stashed in the trunk for occasions like this, blending in as best he could, and then he walked the remaining way on foot, his footsteps heavy with the weight of his decision. His mind was firmly made up now, even though he knew deep down that what he was about to do was risky. Perhaps even a bit cruel and unfair, but he felt he had no choice. He absolutely had to know the truth about her feelings, to see if her love was real or if it was tainted by the allure of his fortune. When he finally arrived at the farm, he spotted Gabriella out in the garden, diligently watering the plants with care and attention, humming a soft tune to herself. His heart couldn't help but speed up a little at the sight of her, a familiar warmth spreading through him. She looked so effortlessly beautiful, without even trying. Her hair casually pulled back into a messy ponytail framed her face perfectly, her hands dirty from the soil as she tended to the earth with love and patience. "Lucas!" Gabriella exclaimed with pure joy, dropping the watering can immediately and running over to embrace him in a warm, heartfelt hug that made him question everything all over again. "I wasn't expecting you today at all. What a wonderful surprise this is." He hugged her back tightly, inhaling the familiar, comforting scent of her hair, a mix of fresh flowers, baked goods, and the earthy aroma of the farm. Was he really about to risk losing all of this, everything they had built together over these past months? "Gabby, we need to talk," he said, his voice trembling slightly with the weight of what was coming, the words feeling like lead in his mouth. Her bright smile faded away in an instant, replaced by a look of deep concern and worry. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Lucas took a deep, steadying breath, feeling like the absolute worst man in the world for what he was about to say and do, for the deception he was about to unleash. "I lost everything, Gabby." "What do you mean?" she asked, her eyes widening in confusion and worry, her hand reaching out to touch his arm reassuringly. "My company, a business partner, he stole money from the accounts, forged my signature on important documents that committed me to bad deals. By the time I discovered it all, it was already too late to stop the damage." Lucas allowed a few tears to escape his eyes, genuinely surprised at how convincing and emotional he sounded in that moment, as if the lie was becoming real, even to him. "I'm ruined. Everything I worked so hard to build over the years, it's all gone now, vanished in an instant." Gabriella stared at him for what felt like an eternity, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Lucas braced himself inwardly for the inevitable reaction, the disappointment that would creep into her eyes, the growing distance between them, perhaps even the rejection he feared so much, the confirmation of his worst suspicions. But what happened next caught him completely off guard, leaving him utterly speechless and reevaluating everything he thought he knew. "Oh, Lucas," she said softly, pulling him into another tight hug, holding him close as if to shield him from the world's cruelties. "That's absolutely awful, but it's going to be okay. I promise you, we'll figure this out." She held his face gently in her hands, looking into his eyes with a compassion that made his heart ache. "We'll get through this together, no matter what it takes." "Together?" The word escaped his lips as a whisper of disbelief, his voice barely audible as he processed her response. "Of course," she replied without hesitation. "Do you really think I would leave you at a time like this, when you need me the most?" She smiled through her own tears, her eyes filled with unwavering support. "Come on, let's go inside the house. I'll call Dad and my sisters right away. You'll stay here with us while you recover and get back on your feet." "Stay here? But Gabby, I can't pay for anything right now. I can't contribute to the household or help out financially." Who said anything about paying or money? She took his hand firmly and led him toward the simple but cozy farmhouse that had always felt like a haven. "You're family now, Lucas, and family takes care of each other, through good times and bad, no questions asked." Lucas felt a thick lump forming in his throat as he stepped inside the house, the warmth of the home enveloping him. Gabriella quickly called her father and sisters, explaining the situation with a calm urgency. What happened next shocked him even more, deepening the complexity of his emotions. Miguel, a man of few words with rough, calloused hands from a lifetime of hard labor on the farm, placed a firm, reassuring hand on Lucas's shoulder. "My home is your home, son. No one goes without here, not under my roof." Anna, the eldest sister, was already bustling about, preparing the guest room with fresh linens and a sense of purpose. "I'll put on some fresh sheets for you. After a hot shower and a good, hearty meal, you'll start to feel better, I promise." Clara, the middle sister, began making a pot of soothing tea, her movements efficient and kind. What matters most is your health and your family, Lucas. Money comes and goes, but those things are forever. Lucas sat at the warring kitchen table, watching this humble family spring into action to help him, a man they had only known for 6 short months, without hesitation or expectation. They didn't pry for details about how much he had lost or question if he had been careless in his business dealings. They just offered their help freely, without any conditions or strings attached. "Don't worry," Gabriella whispered, sitting beside him and holding his hand tightly, her touch a lifeline in his storm of doubt. "You once told me how you started from nothing and built your business from the ground up. You can do it again, and this time you won't be alone. I'll be right by your side every step of the way." Lucas felt a tightness in his chest that he couldn't ignore. His elaborate plan to test Gabriella was revealing something he hadn't anticipated, not just about her character, but about himself and the emptiness of his own life. In all his years of accumulating wealth and wielding power, he had never experienced anything quite like this. Real, unconditional love with no hidden agendas or expectations. As the family moved around him, getting ready to support him in his supposed set time of need, Lucas realized that maybe, just maybe was the one being tested after all. The next morning, Lucas woke up to the distant sound of roosters crowing, their calls piercing the early dawn light. For a brief moment, he felt disoriented in the simple guest room where he had slept, the space modest yet comforting. The clean sheets carried a faint hint of lavender, the window opened to a breathtaking view of the rolling countryside, and a sturdy wooden chair held his clothes, folded neatly with care. He smiled faintly, recognizing Gabriella's thoughtful touch in every detail. "You're awake." Her sweet, gentle voice came accompanied by a soft knock on the door, pulling him from his thoughts. "Yes, come in," he replied, sitting up in bed. Gabriella entered the room, carrying a tray laden with steaming coffee, warm homemade bread, and fresh jam, her face showing the signs of someone who hadn't slept much but was determined not to let it show. She wore a floral apron over a simple dress, exuding a quiet strength that he admired more than ever. "I brought you breakfast. I thought you might need some more rest, but Dad's been out in the field since sunrise, tending to the chores." Lucas sat up fully, feeling a pang of guilt. "You didn't have to go through all this trouble, Gabby. I don't deserve it." "It's no trouble at all," she assured him, placing the tray on the nightstand with a smile. "How are you feeling today? Any better?" "Still processing everything," he replied honestly, the weight of his life pressing on him like a heavy stone. Gabriella sat on the edge of the bed and took his hand in hers, her touch warm and reassuring. "I've been thinking all night," she began, her eyes sparkling with a determined resolve that he had come to love. "This could be a chance, a blessing in disguise, maybe even a new beginning, something different and exciting for both of us." "What do you mean?" he asked, intrigued despite himself. "Dad always needs more help here on the farm. Anna teaches at the town school and Clara works at the health clinic. I split my time between college classes and helping with the farm work. It would be great to have another pair of hands around here, especially yours." Lucas swallowed hard, the idea of farm work hitting him like a cold wave. He barely knew how to operate a washing machine, let alone handle the physical demands of rural life. As if she could read his thoughts, Gabriella smiled encouragingly. "I know you've never done anything like this before, but Dad's a great teacher, patient and knowledgeable, and while you're learning, you can stay here with us. No pressure, just take it one day at a time." The very idea of working on a farm was terrifying to Lucas, a man accustomed to boardrooms and high-stakes meetings, but saying no would seem strange for someone who was supposedly out of options and desperate. "I think it's a great idea," he managed to say, trying to sound thankful instead of panicked, his voice steadier than he felt. After breakfast, Lucas met Miguel out in the field, the sun already climbing higher in the sky. The 60-year-old man with his sun-worn skin and strong, muscular arms forged from decades of labor looked him over from head to toe, assessing him without judgment. "Gabriella told me you're going to help us," he said straight to the point, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Ever worked the land before?" "Actually, no, sir," Lucas admitted, feeling exposed. Miguel nodded, not looking the least bit surprised. "We all start without knowing a thing. Come on, I'll show you the basics, and we'll take it slow." The next few hours were a profoundly humbling experience for Lucas. Hands that were used to signing multi-million-dollar contracts were now gripping shovels and hoes, digging into the earth with effort. His Italian leather shoes had been replaced with rubber boots borrowed from Miguel, practical and worn. The sun beat down relentlessly on his skin, which rarely saw daylight outside of luxury resorts and air-conditioned offices. By lunchtime, his muscles were screaming in protest, every movement a reminder of his inexperience. He walked back to the house, staggering slightly next to Miguel, who didn't seem tired at all, his endurance a testament to years of this life. Clara, the middle sister who worked as a nurse assistant, smiled kindly as he entered, handing him a damp towel to wipe his sweaty face. "The first time is always the hardest," she said with empathy, "but you'll get used to it. Take a quick shower while I finish preparing lunch." In the shower, Lucas examined the blisters already forming on his hands, red and raw. As the CEO of a billion-dollar company, he faced challenges every day, negotiations, crises, high-pressure decisions, but nothing quite like the raw physical labor of that morning. A new kind of respect was growing in him for Miguel and his family, for the quiet dignity of their daily struggles. During lunch, Anna, the oldest sister who taught at the local school, brought out some men's clothes from a box. "These belong to my ex-husband," she explained without a hint of embarrassment or bitterness. "I think they'll fit you better than ruining your own out in the field." "Thank you," Lucas replied, genuinely grateful for their kindness. "You're all doing so much for me, more than I could ever repay." "It's the least we can do," Anna said with a gentle smile that reached her eyes. "Gabriella has never brought anyone home before. If she chose you, it's because you're someone truly special to her." 2 weeks passed by in a blur of activity. Lucas gradually got used to the rhythm of life on the farm, waking up at sunrise with the first light and falling into bed exhausted every night, his body aching but his mind clearer. His once soft hands now proudly displayed calluses, badges of his effort. To his own surprise, he was starting to enjoy the simple life, the satisfaction of seeing plants grow, the fresh air, the sense of accomplishment from a day's hard work. One lazy Sunday afternoon, while everyone else was resting after a filling lunch, Gabriella asked him to go for a walk. "I want to show you a special place," she said, taking his hand with a mysterious smile. They strolled to a small, serene lake at the back of the property, the sunset reflecting on the calm water, creating a breathtaking scene of oranges, pinks, and purples. "I come here when I need to think or find peace," she explained, sitting down on the soft grass by the water's edge. "It's my favorite place in the whole world, a little slice of heaven." Lucas sat beside her, feeling a profound peace he had never known in his luxury penthouses in Chicago, surrounded by opulence but always alone. "Gabby, wait," he started, but she interrupted him gently, taking both of his hands in hers. "There's something I need to tell you first." Her expression was serious, determined, yet filled with vulnerability. "These past few weeks, seeing you here adjusting to our life, working hard without a single complaint, it just confirmed what I already knew in my heart." Lucas felt his heart race wildly. Had she somehow figured out his secret, unraveled the web of lies? "Lucas, I loved you when you had money and success, and I love you now without any of that." She took a deep breath, her cheeks flushing a soft pink. "Actually, I think I love you even more now, seeing who you really are when everything else is stripped away. The core of you." Lucas felt the words catch in his throat like a knot, guilt eating him alive from the inside. "What I'm trying to say is," Gabriella continued, her voice steady despite the nervousness in her eyes, "I know it might sound crazy, but will you marry me?" Lucas was in complete shock. Out of all the possibilities he had imagined, he never expected this turn of events. "You're asking me to marry you?" "I am," she said, smiling a bit nervously but with pure sincerity. "I know it's not traditional, and I don't have a ring to give you right now, but I don't want to wait any longer. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, Lucas. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building something beautiful together." In that pivotal moment, Lucas almost confessed everything, the cruel test, the fortune he still possessed, the luxurious life he could offer her in an instant. But looking into Gabriella's honest, loving eyes, he knew he had to see the test through the end to be absolutely sure. "Yes," he said, tears welling up in his eyes. "Yes, I want to marry you more than anything." A week later, they got married in the town's small, quaint church, a place filled with history and community spirit. The ceremony was simple and intimate, with just a few people in attendance, only Gabriella's family and a handful of close neighbors who had known her all her life. Gabriella wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered by Anna and Clara with loving hands, the fabric carrying memories of happier times. Lucas wore a suit borrowed from the priest, since the only one he owned was too expensive to fit the story he had told of being broke. During the vows, when he promised to love and honor Gabriella in wealth and in poverty, the weight of those words hit him harder than ever before, resonating deep within his soul. At the small reception that followed, held in the backyard of the farm and decorated with twinkling string lights and vibrant wildflowers picked from the fields, Miguel walked up to Lucas with 2 glasses of homemade wine, his expression thoughtful. "My Gabriella has always been special," he said, handing 1 glass to Lucas. "Stubborn as a mule, determined to chase her dreams with a heart bigger than the world itself." "Yes, she's amazing," Lucas agreed, watching his new wife dance joyfully with her sisters under the stars. "Take good care of her," Miguel went on, his eyes intense and piercing. "Whatever the future holds for you too, remember that honesty is the foundation of any marriage, the bedrock that holds it all together." Lucas felt like Miguel could see right through him, as if he knew the truth lurking beneath the surface. He simply nodded, unable to find any words, the guilt weighing heavier. That night, as Gabriella slept peacefully in his arms in the small room they now shared, Lucas made a decision that would alter their path. He would continue with his plan, but take it in a new direction. He would convince Gabriella to move to Chicago, where he could slowly reveal the truth and give her the life she deserved. She deserved more than this simple existence. She deserved everything he could offer and more, a world of opportunities. A month after the wedding, Lucas started planting the seeds of the idea of moving to Chicago. They were lying in bed after a long day of work on the farm, the room lit by a soft lamp, when he brought it up casually. "Gabby, have you ever thought about what it would be like to live in a big city with all the excitement and possibilities?" She turned to him, curious, her head resting on his chest. "Why do you ask?" "I've been thinking about it a lot. You're in your last year of culinary school. In Chicago, there are so many more opportunities for talented chefs like you, places where you could really shine." Gabriella became thoughtful, playing with a loose thread on the blanket as she considered his words. "I don't know, Lucas. My family's here. Dad depends on our help with the farm more than ever." "I understand completely," he said, holding her close. "It's just an idea for now. But think about it. We could start fresh there. I'd look for a job, you'd finish school, and maybe even open your own place one day, something that's all yours." In the days that followed, Lucas kept mentioning Chicago casually, weaving it into conversations. He talked about the beautiful parks, the diverse restaurants, the endless opportunities for growth. Little by little, he noticed Gabriella starting to warm up to the idea, her eyes lighting up at the possibilities. One night, during a family dinner around the kitchen table, she surprised everyone with an announcement. "We're thinking about moving to Chicago," Gabriella said, holding Lucas's hand tightly under the table. Silence fell over the table like a blanket. Miguel froze with his fork in midair, staring at his daughter with a mix of surprise and concern. "That's a big decision," he finally said. His voice measured. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes, Dad. I want to finish school, and Lucas thinks we could start a new life there, build something amazing." Anna, always the practical one, was the first to speak up. "Do you have enough savings to get started?" "Big cities are expensive with rent and everything else." Lucas felt his stomach drop. In his fabricated story, he was a man with nothing left. "I have some old contacts in Chicago," he said quickly. "Connections from my previous work who might help me find a job. It won't be anything fancy, but it'll be enough to get us going. And I plan to sell cakes and pies while I finish school," Gabriella added with the same passion and enthusiasm Lucas had always admired in her. "Just like I do here at the market, only in a bigger place with more customers." Clara, always the most emotional and generous of the sisters, went to her room, retrieved all her savings, and handed them to Lucas and Gabriella without a second thought. Then Anna and Miguel followed suit, giving them all the money they had saved over the years. It's not much, but it should cover a few months of rent and basics, Miguel said quietly. Lucas was speechless, his throat tight with emotion. He didn't know what to say, but to keep up the act, he couldn't turn it down. I promise I'll pay you all back one day. Thank you so much for what you're doing. It means the world. Already crying, Clara hugged him tightly. We're going to miss you so much. We'll miss you too, Gabriella said, holding back her own tears. But it's not like we're never coming back. It's just a new chapter in our lives. Miguel stayed quiet, watching the couple with a discerning eye. After a long pause, he looked directly at Lucas and spoke. Take care of her in the big city. It's a different world than what she's used to, full of challenges. With my life, Mr. Miguel, Lucas promised, feeling the weight of the lie on his shoulders like never before. 2 weeks later, with the old family truck loaded with their few belongings, Gabrielle and Lucas said goodbye to the farm. It was a morning filled with tears, tight hugs, and promises to visit often. Miguel held his daughter tightly for a long time, whispering advice in her ear about staying true to herself. When he turned to Lucas, his look was intense and knowing. Remember what we talked about on your wedding day? He said softly, squeezing his son-in-law's shoulder firmly. Lucas just nodded, unable to meet his father-in-law's gaze, the guilt churning inside him. The trip to Chicago was long and reflective. Gabriella felt a mix of excitement about their new life and sadness at leaving her family behind, her home of so many years. Lucas, on the other hand, was dealing with an inner conflict that grew with every mile. He was taking his wife to a city where he was known as a powerful businessman, a titan of industry. How would he keep up the lie without it unraveling? Sticking to his plan, he rented a small apartment in a modest neighborhood far from the financial district where his company headquarters stood tall. The place was tiny, with a combined living room and kitchen, 1 bedroom and a basic bathroom. Nothing like the luxury penthouses he was used to, but it was clean and cozy, a starting point. It's perfect, Gabriella said as she stepped in, spinning around in the middle of the room with a delighted laugh. Our first home together as husband and wife. Lucas smiled, caught up in her infectious happiness. For someone used to mansions and high-end apartments, the place should have felt small and sad, but through Gabriella's optimistic eyes, it looked like a palace full of potential. The next day, Lucas told her he was going out to look for a job. He put on his simplest clothes and left, promising to be back before dinner with some good news. As soon as he turned the corner, out of sight, he took a cab to a nearby department store where he kept clothes in a private locker for VIP clients like himself. He changed quickly, transforming back into the CEO he really was, sharp and commanding. As the cab took him to the towering skyscraper where Summit Innovations headquarters were located, he rehearsed what he would say about his mysterious absence, preparing for the questions. Lucas, thank God you're back. His secretary, Patricia, almost spilled her coffee when she saw him step out of the elevator, her face a mix of relief and surprise. Where have you been? We were all so worried about you. I needed to take some time off, he answered naturally, though his mind was elsewhere. Personal matters that couldn't wait, but I'm back now. Any emergencies I need to handle? Well, yes, several, actually. The board is furious about your absence. They've been calling nonstop. 3 investors have threatened to pull out their funding, and the tech global execs are pushing hard for a response on that merger deal we've been negotiating. Lucas smiled confidently, slipping back into his role. It's time to get back to work then. Over the following weeks, he settled into a precarious routine. He would leave home dressed modestly, change into his business attire on the way to work, and reverse the process on the way back, all while keeping up appearances. He told Gabriella he had found a job as an administrative assistant at a mid-sized company. The pay is not great, he explained, handing her what seemed like a reasonable amount for that kind of job. But it's a start, something to build on. Gabriella, meanwhile, had contacted the local university and managed to transfer her enrollment to finish her culinary arts degree. She also started baking cakes in her small apartment kitchen and selling them to nearby coffee shops, her entrepreneurial spirit shining. We're going to make it, Lucas, she would say every night as they counted the money they'd earned that day, her voice full of hope. Step by step, we're building our future together. He agreed, even though he knew he could give her a life of luxury right away. But there was something special about seeing Gabriella fight for her dreams with such confidence and determination. Let's play a little game for those who only read the comments. Type pizza in the comments below. Only those who read this far will get it. Now let's keep going with the story. There's so much more to unfold. One day, coming home later than usual from the office after a long meeting, Lucas walked into the apartment to the sweet smell of chocolate and vanilla wafting through the air. Gabriella was in their tiny kitchen, covered in flour from head to toe, surrounded by dozens of colorful cupcakes, each one a work of art. "What's all this?" he asked, amazed by her productivity. "I got my first big client," she explained, jumping up to hug him, leaving flower prints on his shirt. "A neighborhood bookstore is hosting a children's event this weekend and ordered 50 cupcakes from me." Lucas hugged her tightly, genuinely proud of her achievement. "That's amazing, Gabby. You're incredible." "And there's more," she went on, excited and bubbling with energy. "The bookstore owner loved my samples so much that she said she might recommend me for other events. Who knows, if things keep growing like this, I might even open my own bakery one day. Something small but all mine." Gabriella's excitement was contagious, filling the room with joy. That night, they celebrated with cheap wine and laughter, making plans for the future like any young couple just starting out, dreaming big despite the odds. But the next day, Lucas received troubling news at the company that shattered his calm. Jeffrey Winters, one of the biggest investors in the tech industry and a ruthless competitor, was attempting a hostile takeover of Summit Innovations. Rumors were swirling that he planned to dismantle the company piece by piece and sell it all for profit, putting hundreds of jobs at risk and destroying everything Lucas had built. "We need to act fast," said Marcos, his lawyer and friend, during an emergency meeting in the boardroom. "Winters has already bought 15% of the shares and is pressuring other shareholders to sell out." Lucas ran a hand over his face, tense and focused. "Get our legal team moving immediately. I want every possible option on the table to stop this takeover in its tracks." "There's one more thing," Marcos hesitated, his expression grave. "Winters is using your recent absence as ammunition."
"He's saying you've lost control of the company and that the investors would be better off with him in charge, portraying you as unreliable."
The news hit Lucas like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of him. His little game of pretending to be poor was now threatening not just his relationship with Gabriella, but the company he had built from the ground up and the livelihoods of thousands of people who depended on it. "That's not going to happen," he said firmly, his voice steel. "Summit is my life.
"I'm not going to let anyone tear it apart, not after all we've accomplished."
That night, he returned to the small apartment with a heavy mind burdened by the crisis. He found Gabriella asleep on the couch, surrounded by recipes and notes for her cake business, her face peaceful in repose. The contrast between their two worlds had never felt so stark and clear. The crisis at the company meant he needed to be more present than ever at Summit, which made it harder and harder to keep up his act with Gabriella. How much longer could he live this double life before everything came crashing down around him? Lucas now lived in two completely different worlds, each pulling him in opposite directions. In the morning, he kissed Gabriella goodbye in their little apartment, put on simple clothes, and left the house as the administrative assistant she believed him to be, unassuming and ordinary. But once he turned the corner, he transformed back into the powerful CEO of Summit Innovations, sharp-suited and authoritative. His routine was a carefully choreographed dance designed to avoid any slips. He carried two phones, one inexpensive for Gabriella to call him on, and a top-of-the-line one for business matters that buzzed with constant notifications. He arrived home at the same time every day, always with made-up stories about co-workers who didn't exist and a pretend boss who was demanding but fair, all to maintain the illusion. "How was your day?" Gabriella asked every evening as they cooked dinner together in the small kitchen, the space filled with the aromas of home-cooked meals. "The usual," he would say with a casual shrug. "Lots of emails to sort through, a few meetings that dragged on, nothing exciting. And yours?" Gabriella's eyes always lit up when she talked about her culinary school and her growing cake business, her passion evident in every word. In just 2 months in the city, she had already built up a list of regular clients, mostly local cafes and small events that appreciated her unique flavors. "Professor Martinez said my cherry and almond cake was the best in the class today," she told him one night, bouncing with excitement. "He said I have blessed hands for baking, a natural talent." Lucas smiled, genuinely proud of her accomplishments. There was something special about seeing Gabriella find her own success, unaware of the wealth he could have offered her to make it easier. Meanwhile, at Summit Innovations, the fight against the hostile takeover was draining his energy and testing his limits. Jeffrey Winters was relentless, using more aggressive tactics by the day to gain control, like a shark circling its prey. He convinced 3 more shareholders to sell. Marcos reported in a tense meeting. He's only 7% away from majority control now. Lucas slammed the table in frustration, his patience wearing thin. Call a press conference for tomorrow. I'm going to announce our new product line ahead of schedule. That should push up our stock value and make the takeover much harder for him. The secretary took notes quickly. Will 10 a.m. work? Perfect, Lucas confirmed, going over his mental calendar. Gabriella would be in class at that time, so there would be no risk of her seeing him on the news. Living a double life was becoming more and more difficult, a constant tightrope walk. There were days when he almost slipped, nearly mentioned something about the company to Gabriella, or almost called Marcos in front of her by mistake. More and more, he felt the heavy weight of the lie he had built, like a house of cards ready to collapse. One afternoon, Gabriella came home glowing with enthusiasm. I have an amazing idea, she exclaimed, tossing her backpack on the couch with a thud. I'm working on a line of gourmet cakes for school, creative combinations like lavender with Sicilian lemon and spicy chocolate with cardamom, flavors that surprise and delight. That sounds delicious, Lucas said, genuinely interested in her creativity. My professor says I have a real knack for innovation in baking. She stepped closer, holding his hands. So I thought, what if I started selling these special cakes to companies? You know, for corporate events, receptions, that sort of thing, places where people appreciate something unique. Lucas felt his heart skip a beat. Alarm bells ringing. Companies? I don't know, Gabby. Big companies usually go with professional catering services that have established reputations. But that's exactly the point, she replied, so excited she didn't notice his hesitation or discomfort. I can start with smaller companies, build up a portfolio gradually, and I've got a secret family recipe for a cinnamon cake that no one can resist. It's been passed down for generations. Seeing how enthusiastic she was, Lucas couldn't bring himself to discourage her further. It's a great idea, he finally said. Just be patient. These things take time to build. Of course, Rome wasn't built in a day, she smiled. I'll start tomorrow, handing out samples at some of the office buildings nearby. Lucas swallowed hard, imagining the nightmare scenario of Gabriella showing up unannounced at his company with cake samples in hand. The risk was growing by the day, the walls closing in. The following week, while Lucas sat through yet another tense meeting about the hostile takeover attempt, his mind racing with strategies. Gabriella faced her own challenges at the university. The University of Chicago campus was a far cry from the small-town college she had come from, with its ivy-covered buildings and competitive atmosphere. Most of the culinary students came from wealthy families, wore designer clothes, and talked casually about internships at Michelin-starred restaurants around the world, their lives seemingly effortless. Gabriella, with her modest clothing and small-town demeanor, quickly became an easy target for a particular group of mean-spirited girls who thrived on exclusion. Look who's here, the farm princess, Vanessa Miller remarked snidely as Gabriella walked into the kitchen lab, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Vanessa was the daughter of a well-known food critic, privileged and entitled. Are we learning to make country pudding today or perhaps some rustic slop? Her friends, Rebecca and Stephanie, laughed as if it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard, their giggles echoing in the room. Gabriella took a deep breath and ignored them just like she always did, focusing instead on preparing her dish of the day, a refined version of a traditional Brazilian dessert that showcased her heritage. Don't let them get to you, whispered Kim, a Korean classmate who had become her friend and ally. They're just spoiled girls who've never had to earn anything in life, handed everything on a silver platter. Gabriella gave her a grateful smile. Don't worry, I grew up with 2 older sisters. I know how to handle teasing and sibling rivalry. But things got worse when the professor announced the groups for the final project. Miller, Gabriella Oliveira, Rebecca Chen, and Stephanie Johnson, you'll be doing the spring menu together. Vanessa's face twisted in dismay. Professor, can I switch groups? I'm allergic to people who smell like cow manure. The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. The professor looked at Vanessa sternly, his voice firm. "Miss Miller, that comment is completely inappropriate and unacceptable. You'll work with your assigned group or receive a 0 on the project, no exceptions." Vanessa rolled her eyes but didn't argue further, though her resentment was palpable. After class, Gabriella went to the bathroom to pull herself together, splashing water on her face. Vanessa's words had hurt more than she wanted to admit, cutting deep. Looking in the mirror, she thought of her father, her sisters, and the farm she loved so much, the place that had shaped her. They would make you strong and resilient. With renewed determination, Gabriella decided to move forward with her plan to sell cakes to companies, refusing to let the bullies win. That afternoon, she prepared several samples of her best cakes: cinnamon apple, chocolate orange, and coconut lime, each one baked with love and precision. The next day, she dressed in her best clothes, a navy blue skirt and a white blouse Anna had given her as a gift, and headed to the business district with her sample box, her heart full of hope. What Gabriella didn't know was that on that same day, Lucas was holding a press conference in the lobby of his building, announcing a new technology he hoped would revolutionize the market and save his company from being taken over, the room packed with reporters. Gabriella started with the smaller buildings, where she got mixed responses. Some receptionists happily tried her cakes and asked for business cards. Others barely looked at her before turning her away politely. By late afternoon, tired but still hopeful, she reached a tall glass skyscraper that gleamed in the sunlight. Summit Innovations, the elegant letters at the entrance read. "Last try of the day," she murmured to herself, straightening her hair before stepping inside with confidence. In the luxurious lobby, she approached the front desk, her box in hand. "Good afternoon. My name is Gabriella Oliveira. I'm a culinary student, and I'm starting a small bakery service for corporate events. I brought some samples if you'd like to try them. They're fresh and delicious." The receptionist, a well-dressed woman in her 50s, smiled politely. "How thoughtful of you. I love cake. Who doesn't? May I try one?" Of course, Gabriella opened the box, revealing the neatly decorated mini samples, each one a tempting treat. While the receptionist tasted the cinnamon cake and let out little sounds of delight, Gabriella stood there in awe, taking in the impressive lobby and its elegant design, the marble floors and modern art. That's when her eyes caught something, or rather, someone familiar crossing the lobby toward the private elevators. It was Lucas, her Lucas, but not the Lucas she knew, the one who wore simple clothes and always looked tired from his job as an assistant. This Lucas wore a perfectly tailored suit that screamed success, walked with the confidence of someone who owned the place, and was chatting animatedly with two men in equally expensive suits. "Mr. Bennett," one of the men called out respectfully, "great presentation today. The press is loving the announcement. It's all over the news." "Thanks, Richard," Lucas, her husband, replied with a confident smile that she had rarely seen. "Tell the marketing department to ramp up the campaign. I want everyone talking about this technology by the end of the week, dominating the conversation." Gabriella froze in place, her world tilting. The sample box slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a dull thud, the cake scattering across the polished marble. The receptionist looked over, alarmed. "Are you all right, dear?" But Gabriella couldn't speak, couldn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on Lucas, her husband, the man she thought was a low-paid administrative assistant, barely able to afford their tiny apartment, being treated like the owner of one of the largest tech companies in the country, a leader in his field. Before Lucas could spot her in the crowd, Gabriella snapped out of it just enough to crouch down, gather the scattered cakes hastily, and mumble an apology to the confused receptionist, her voice shaking. With shaky legs and a heart pounding in her chest like a drum, she stumbled out of the building into the busy street. Pieces started to come together in her mind like a puzzle. The long hours at work, the phone calls he always took in private, the way he spoke about business when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Her husband, the man who had promised to love and respect her, had been living a lie all along. And she, the small-town girl who believed she had found true love against all odds, was just part of that elaborate lie. With tears blurring her vision, Gabriella took the bus back to their apartment. Her dreams of selling cakes to companies forgotten for the moment under the crushing weight of betrayal. The ride home felt like the longest of her life. The bus jostling through traffic as her mind raced. Sitting there with the squished cake box on her lap, she tried desperately to process what she had just seen and make sense of it all. Lucas, her husband, wasn't a struggling assistant trying to rebuild his life from scratch. He was apparently the owner of one of Chicago's biggest tech firms, a man of immense power and wealth. When she reached the small apartment, Gabriella stood at the door for a few minutes, too overwhelmed to go in, her key trembling in her hand. Everything now seemed like part of a setup, a show, a stage designed to fool her into believing a fantasy. Finally, she took a deep breath, turned the key, and stepped inside. She looked around with new eyes, the worn-out couch with its faded fabric, the coffee table with the broken leg propped up by books, the thin curtains that barely kept out the light. Lucas, a wealthy man, had chosen to live here with her in this humble space. Why? Her phone rang suddenly, making her jump. It was Lucas. "Hey, Gabby, I'm going to have to stay late at work tonight. Don't wait up for dinner. I'll grab something quick." "Okay." "All right," she answered, trying to keep her voice steady despite the storm inside. "Good luck with work." "You okay?" "Your voice sounds off, a bit shaky." "I'm fine. Just tired. School was tough today, that's all." The lies came so easily now, she noticed with a deep sadness, mirroring the deception she had just uncovered. "Okay. Love you." Gabriella hung up without replying, the words sticking in her throat. Those words, "love you," felt empty now, hollow and meaningless. What did they mean coming from someone living a complete lie, pretending every day? She spent the next few hours in a daze, sitting on the couch replaying every moment from the past few months in her mind, dissecting them for clues she had missed. Lucas's supposed financial ruin that had come out of nowhere, the rushed wedding full of emotion, the move to Chicago under the guise of starting fresh, the modest apartment, the assistant job, all lies, carefully constructed. Why would a rich and powerful man pretend to lose everything? Why marry her under false pretenses? Why live in this cramped apartment when he could have been in a mansion with every luxury? The answer hit her like a punch to the gut, knocking the breath out of her. He was testing her, trying to see if she loved him for who he was or for his money. And she, a hopeless romantic with a trusting heart, had fallen right into the trap, proving herself without knowing it. Tears of anger and humiliation streamed down her face as she heard the key in the door. It was almost midnight and Lucas was finally home from work. "Gabby," he called out as he walked in, surprised to see her still awake, the lights on low. "I thought you'd be asleep by now." She stayed silent, just looking at him with eyes full of hurt. Lucas looked tired. His hair slightly messy, dark circles under his eyes, always acting the part of the overworked assistant. "What's wrong?" he asked, walking closer with concern. "Have you been crying?" "Who are you, Lucas?" The question came out in a whisper, laced with pain. "What do you mean? Who are you, really?" She stood up, staring at him intently. "Because clearly you're not who you said you were." His face went pale, the color draining away. "I don't know what you're talking about, Gabby. I'm tired. Can we talk tomorrow?" "I went downtown today," she continued, ignoring his attempt to escape the conversation. "Trying to sell my cakes to businesses. Remember that idea you thought might not work so well?" Lucas swallowed hard, starting to understand where this was going, his eyes widening. "Funny how I ended up at Summit Innovations, that huge glass skyscraper in the business district. And guess who I saw there?" "Gabby, I can explain." "I saw you, Lucas," she shouted, all the anger she'd been holding back exploding at once like a dam breaking. "Wearing an expensive suit, giving orders, people calling you boss with respect." Lucas closed his eyes for a moment as if absorbing the blow, shoulders slumping. "The show's over," she went on, trembling with anger and betrayal. "I want the truth now, all of it." He walked slowly to the couch and sat down, running his hands over his face in defeat. "You're right," he finally began, his voice low. "I didn't lose everything. In fact, I didn't lose anything at all. It was all a fabrication." "So, it was all a lie from the very beginning," she said, her voice breaking. "Not all of it," he argued, looking at her with pleading eyes full of desperation. "My feelings for you are real, Gabby. They always have been, from the first moment." She laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the small room. Your feelings? How can I believe anything you say now, after this? I own Summit Innovations, he continued, ignoring the question as he confessed. It's worth billions. I have apartments, houses, luxury cars, the whole life I pretended to have lost, all still there. Why? Her question was simple but filled with raw pain. Why would you do this to me, to us? Lucas stood and began pacing the room, clearly upset and agitated. You don't understand what it's like, Gabby. Growing up with money, always surrounded by people who only want what you have, not who you are deep down. I've dated plenty of women before, and they were all after my wealth, not me, using me as a stepping stone. He stopped and looked at her intently, his eyes filled with old pain. Years ago, before I met you, I was engaged. Vanessa, beautiful, smart, from a good family. His voice trembled slightly with the memory. I truly loved her and thought she felt the same, that we were building a future. What happened? Gabriella asked despite herself, curiosity mixing with her anger. A week before the wedding, I went to surprise her at her place. I overheard her on the phone with her lover. The bitterness in his voice was clear, raw. She was laughing, saying how easy it would be to marry me, take half my fortune in a divorce, and then run off with him, living the high life. Gabriella sat down again, stunned by the revelation, a part of her understanding his scars. After that, I stopped trusting anyone. I built walls around me until I met you. A small, sad smile formed on his face. You were different from all the others, simple, genuine, hard-working, but the doubt was always there, gnawing at me. So you decided to test me? Yes, he admitted, lowering his head in shame. When we fell in love, I couldn't believe someone like you could truly love someone like me without caring about my money. I needed to be sure, to protect myself. And you got your answer, didn't you? She stood up, furious once more. When I gave up everything to be with you, when my family welcomed you with open arms, when I proposed, thinking we were just two ordinary people starting over. Tears were now streaming freely down Gabriella's face, unchecked. Yes, I got my answer, he whispered, tears in his own eyes. And it was more than I ever dreamed of. You showed me a kind of love I didn't know existed, Gabby, pure and selfless. And in return, you lied to me about everything. Not about loving you, he insisted, stepping closer to her. Never about that. Gabriella stepped back as if his touch would burn her, her heart guarded. You don't know what love is, Lucas. Love is trust. It's honesty. It's respect. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. What you did wasn't love. It was manipulation, plain and simple. Please, Gabby, he begged, trying to take her hands. I can fix this. We can start over for real now. No more lies. I'll show you my real life. We can live wherever you want. Have everything you've ever dreamed of. You think that's what I want? She cut him off, incredulous. Your money, your mansions, your luxury cars. No, you still don't get it. She shook her head, disappointed and heartbroken. I'm leaving, Lucas. No, please. He looked desperate now, panic in his eyes. Give me a chance to fix this. I love you, Gabriella. She walked into the bedroom, pulled a suitcase from under the bed, and began stuffing her clothes inside hastily. I hope one day you understand what really matters in life, but it'll be without me. Lucas followed her, begging, explaining, crying, but Gabriella had made up her mind, her resolve unyielding. In less than an hour, her things were packed, and she called a cab. Where are you going? Lucas asked, defeated as she waited on the sidewalk. Home. My real home. Her voice was calm now, the storm inside replaced by quiet resignation. Don't come after me, Lucas. It's over. When the taxi arrived, Gabriella got in without looking back, her heart heavy. As the car pulled away, she allowed herself one last moment of weakness. She looked through the rear window and saw Lucas standing on the sidewalk, the lonely figure of a man who had everything material, yet had just lost what truly mattered in life, the love of a good woman. The return to the farm was a journey filled with pain and deep reflection for Gabriella, each mile a reminder of what she had lost. During the long hours of travel, she went back and forth between silent tears that streamed down her face and a deep anger that burned inside her like a fire. How could she have been so naive, so blind to the signs? How did she miss the inconsistencies in his stories? Even more painful was admitting to herself that despite everything, the lies, the betrayal, she still loved Lucas, the man she had met at the farm, who had worked side by side with her father, who had accepted her proposal with tears in his eyes. That man still lived in her heart, even if he was just a character played by a skilled actor, a facade. When she finally arrived at the farm, it was almost evening, the sun dipping low on the horizon. The sight of the simple house where she grew up, with smoke lazily curling out of the chimney and chickens pecking around the yard in their familiar way, brought a lump to her throat and a wave of comfort. This was her place, her truth, her anchor in a world gone mad. Miguel was in the barn when he heard the taxi approaching, the gravel crunching under tires. He came out just in time to see his youngest daughter stepping out of the car, suitcase in hand and eyes red from crying, her posture defeated. He didn't need any explanation. The pain was written all over her face. He just opened his arms wide, and Gabriella ran into them like she did when she was a little girl, seeking solace. "Daddy," she sobbed, holding on to him like a lifeline, her body shaking. "Shoo, it's all right, my daughter," he whispered gently, stroking her hair with rough but tender hands. "You're home now, safe with us." Anna and Clara were alerted by the commotion and soon joined the embrace, wrapping their arms around her. For a long moment, the family stayed like that, united in their support, giving Gabriella the comfort that only true family love can offer, unconditional and healing. Later, sitting at the kitchen table with steaming cups of tea that Clara had prepared, Gabriella told them everything, her voice breaking at times. The truth about Lucas's identity, the elaborate lie he had built, the cruel test he had put her through to gauge her love. As she spoke, she watched her family's expression shift from surprise to anger, and finally to sadness and empathy. That bastard! Anna was so angry she couldn't find the right words at first. How could he do that? Play with your feelings with our whole family? It's sick, twisted. Clara agreed, holding her younger sister's hand tightly. A man with serious trust issues, deep-seated ones. Miguel stayed silent longer than the others, his wrinkled face more serious than ever, lines etched deeper by worry. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with disappointment and regret. "I sensed something was off about him from the beginning," he admitted. "The way he looked at our simple things, like he was studying some exotic species in a zoo, but I thought it was just a shock of losing everything, adapting to our way of life." He slowly shook his head. "I never imagined such an elaborate lie, so cruel and calculated." "It's not your fault, Dad," Gabriella said, squeezing his rough hand. "He fooled all of us, even me." "So now what?" Anna asked, always the practical one. "What are you going to do next?" Gabriella sighed, looking out the window at the farm she loved so much, the field stretching out. "Start over here, where I've always belonged." She tried to smile, though her eyes still looked sad and haunted. "I'll try to transfer back to the local college, keep baking, take it one day at a time, rebuild my life." Clara and Anna nodded, showing their unwavering support. Miguel, however, still looked concerned, his brow furrowed. "And the marriage? Legally, you're still married." "I'll take care of the divorce," Gabriella answered firmly. "I don't want anything from him, not a penny. I just want to forget Lucas Bennett ever existed in my life." That night, lying in her old bed, surrounded by familiar childhood memories, Gabriella cried until there were no tears left, exhaustion finally claiming her. Not just for the love she had lost, but for the innocence she would never get back, the trust that had been shattered. Lucas had taken more than her heart. He had taken her ability to believe in people so freely. In the days that followed, Gabriella tried to fall back into the rhythm of life on the farm. She woke up early with the sun, helped her father with chores as much as she could, and baked cakes to sell at the local market, finding solace in the routine. On the outside, she seemed to be handling things well, putting on a brave face, but inside she felt empty, a shell of her former self. A week after she returned, she started feeling strangely unwell, morning nausea that came in waves, dizziness that made her head spin, extreme fatigue that left her drained. At first, she blamed the emotional stress of the betrayal, the toll it had taken on her body. But when the nausea didn't stop, persisting day after day, Clara, with her nursing background, suggested a pregnancy test gently. "That's impossible," Gabriella protested, though a chill ran down her spine at the thought. "We were being careful, always." "No method is 100% foolproof," Clara reminded her softly. "And you were trying to build a life together. Maybe without realizing it, things happened." Reluctantly, Gabriella agreed to take the test, her hand shaking as she did. The wait for the result felt like the longest minutes of her life, time stretching endlessly. When the two pink lines appeared in the little window, her world turned upside down again, spinning out of control. Pregnant, she was carrying Lucas's child. The news hit the family like a bolt of lightning from a clear sky, shocking everyone. Anna worried about the financial implications, how they would manage. Clara, always emotional, cried with joy despite the circumstances, hugging her sister. Miguel, after the initial shock, took a practical stance. "He needs to know," he said firmly. "He's the father of that child, regardless of what he did." "No," Gabriella said with conviction, her voice steady. "Lucas lied about everything, Dad. Everything. I don't want my child growing up around someone like that, someone so deceptive." But my mind is made up. She cut in with a determination that surprised them all, her hand protectively on her belly. "I'm going to raise this baby on my own. We have a family here. That's all we need, all I'll ever need." Miguel didn't argue further, respecting his daughter's choice, though his face showed he didn't fully agree, concern lingering. 2 weeks later, during a routine checkup at the clinic, Gabriella received another surprise that left her breathless and overwhelmed. "Congratulations, Mrs. Oliveira," the doctor said with a warm smile, pointing to the ultrasound screen where two tiny forms were visible. "You're having twins." Twins, two babies. It would have been wonderful news under different circumstances. If she were married to a man who truly loved her, if she weren't starting from scratch, if her life weren't in total disarray. That same day, the doctor expressed concern about Gabriella's high blood pressure. "You need to avoid stress at all costs," she warned seriously. "Twin pregnancies are already higher risk, and with your blood pressure, I'm classifying this as high risk. Another complication to manage." Gabriella nodded, promising to take care of herself, though inside she was panicking, fear gripping her. How could she stay calm when her life felt like a hurricane, chaotic and unpredictable? To make things worse, a severe drought hit the region that summer, the worst in years. The farm's crops began to wither under the relentless sun, threatening the family's main source of income and stability. Miguel spent entire days trying to save what he could, rationing the little water they had, his worry etched on his face. "We'll get through this." Anna tried to stay optimistic during dinner one evening, though the deep circles under her eyes revealed her own worries. "We always do, as a family." Gabriella looked at her family, her aging father working beyond his limits, her sisters exhausted from juggling jobs and helping on the farm, and felt a heavy weight in her chest, guilt and concern mingling. Now they had 2 more mouths to feed, and the financial situation was getting worse by the day, the drought unrelenting. On a particularly hot evening, while helping her father check the improvised irrigation system, despite his protests, Gabriella felt a strong wave of dizziness and had to lean on his shoulder to keep from falling, the world spinning. "You need to rest," Miguel said firmly, guiding her back to the house. "Think about the babies first. Just a little lightheaded from the heat." The look Miguel gave her was full of concern and something more, a quiet understanding that things couldn't go on like this indefinitely. "Sweetheart," he began carefully, choosing his words. "I know you don't want to hear this, But Lucas has a right to know about the babies, and financially. No, she cut him off sharply. I'm not going to use my children as an excuse to ask him for money. That's not who I am. We'll manage, she insisted stubbornly. We always have through worse. But that night, alone in her room with the window open to the night breeze, Gabriella allowed herself to face the harsh truth. Things were critical. The farm barely produced enough to support the family as it was, let alone raise 2 more children. Her savings were minimal, barely a cushion. Medical expenses were already piling up with a high-risk pregnancy. Would it be wrong to accept financial help from Lucas for the baby's sake? Was her pride worth more than her children's well-being and future? The answer was clear, but still painful to admit, a bitter pill. The next morning, reluctantly, she picked up the phone to call Lucas, her finger hovering over the dial button, hesitation gripping her. But she couldn't bring herself to press it. Not yet, she whispered to herself, setting the phone down with a sigh. I need to try a little longer on my own, prove I can do this. What Gabriella didn't know was that hundreds of miles away in Chicago, Lucas had already begun searching for her, determined to fix the damage he had caused, no matter the cost or effort. Lucas spent the first few days after Gabriella left in a state of denial and self-pity, the apartment feeling emptier than ever. He stayed in the small space, refusing to return to his luxurious penthouse, as if staying there could somehow keep Gabriella close, a remnant of their time together. He ignored calls from Marcos and his team at Summit, drowning himself in alcohol and regret, replaying the confrontation over and over. On the 4th day, after a particularly rough night of sleeplessness, Gabriella's alarm, which she had forgotten to take, went off at 5 a.m. That familiar sound, once the beginning of another day with the woman he loved, now echoed through the empty apartment like a ghostly reminder of what he had lost. Lucas sat up in bed, staring at the little clock as if it held all the answers in the world, mocking him. Gabriella's morning routine came flooding back to him. How she always woke before him, made fresh coffee with care, hummed softly while setting the table for breakfast. Small moments of real happiness he had thrown away because of his fear and insecurity. What have I done? He murmured to the empty room, his voice echoing. At that moment, something shifted inside him profoundly. The self-pity gave way to determination, a fire igniting. He had made the biggest mistake of his life, but he wasn't going to give up without a fight. He would fight for Gabriella. He would prove himself worthy of her love and forgiveness. The first step was to find out where she was, though he strongly suspected she had returned to her family's farm, the place she always spoke of with such fondness. He even considered hiring private investigators to track her down, but dismissed the idea immediately. It would be another invasion. He had already broken Gabriella's trust through lies and manipulation. He wasn't going to make the same mistake again by spying. Instead, he called the Oliveira family phone directly, his hand shaking as he dialed. The phone rang several times before Anna answered, her voice turning cold and sharp when she recognized him. What do you want, Lucas? Or should I say Mr. Bennett, the big businessman? He swallowed his pride, taking the sarcasm he deserved. Anna, please. I need to speak with Gabriella. It's important. She doesn't want to talk to you, and frankly, neither do we. I understand, but... No, you don't understand, Anna snapped, her voice shaking with pent-up anger. You broke my sister. She came back here a shell of who she was, devastated. You played with her feelings with our whole family. It was cruel and unforgivable. Her words hit Lucas like physical blows, each one more painful than the last, but he knew he had earned them. You're right, he admitted, his voice quiet and contrite. I was selfish and cruel. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I have to try to make things right, to atone. Some things can't be fixed, Lucas. Goodbye. Before he could say another word, Anna hung up, the line going dead. In the days that followed, Lucas sent daily letters to Gabriella. Not emails or text messages, but handwritten letters where he poured out his heart, page after page of raw honesty. He confessed his fears, his insecurities, the emptiness he felt without her in his life. He spoke about the transformation happening inside him, how his eyes had been opened to what really mattered in life, love, family, integrity. He never got a response, but he kept writing, hoping. Meanwhile, he returned to work at Summit, throwing himself into saving the company from the hostile takeover with renewed intensity. No longer for power or money, but for the thousands of employees whose jobs depended on him. That, he realized, was true responsibility, something Gabriella and her family had taught him through their example. "You seem different," Marco said during a meeting, watching him with curiosity. "More grounded, less ruthless. What happened during those weeks you were gone?" Lucas gave a sad smile. "I learned what truly matters and what it costs to lose it, the hard way." The fight against Jeffrey Winters was still fierce, a battle of wits and strategy, but Lucas was gaining ground steadily. His new product line had been a huge success, boosting the company's stock and making the takeover much harder to execute. But no matter how much he focused on work, his thoughts always returned to Gabriella, a constant ache. One day, almost 2 months after she left, Lucas got a call that changed everything. It was a medical clinic in a small town near the Oliveira farm. "Mr. Bennett, this is Dr. Ramirez. I'm calling about your wife, Gabriella Oliveira." Lucas's heart skipped a beat, fear gripping him. "Did something happen to her? Is she okay? She fainted during an appointment today, and we needed to reach her emergency contact. She's stable now, but considering her condition—" "What condition?" Lucas interrupted, panic rising in his voice like a tide. There was a pause on the other end. "The pregnancy, sir. I assumed you knew about it." Lucas felt the world stop spinning. "Pregnancy? Gabriella is pregnant? Oh dear." The doctor sounded genuinely concerned. "Mr. Bennett, your wife is pregnant with twins. It's a high-risk pregnancy because of hypertension. I thought she had told you." Lucas barely managed to thank the doctor and hang up before collapsing into his chair, overwhelmed. Gabriella was expecting not one but 2 babies, his babies, and she had never planned to tell him, keeping it secret. Within an hour, Lucas was on his way to Oliveira Farm, his mind made up. This time, there would be no letters or phone calls. He needed to see Gabriella in person, to be by her side, and with the babies on the way, nothing else mattered in the world. When he arrived at the farm, the first thing he noticed was the poor state of the crops, wilted and dry. The drought had clearly taken a heavy toll, the land cracked and barren in places. Things looked serious, desperate even. He parked his car, a much more modest model than his usual Range Rover, at a distance and walked to the house, his heart pounding with anxiety. Before he could even reach the porch, Miguel appeared at the door, arms crossed and a stern expression on his weathered face. "I knew you'd come eventually," the older man said with no trace of welcome in his voice, his stance protective. "Miguel, please," Lucas pleaded, his voice earnest. "I need to see her. I just found out about the babies. She's pregnant. She doesn't want to see you, and you know why." "I understand, but—" "No, you don't understand." Miguel cut him off, stepping down the stairs to face him directly. "My daughter trusted you. I trusted you. You came into our lives, accepted our hospitality, married Gabriella, all based on lies and deception." Lucas lowered his head, unable to deny the truth or defend himself. "I'm not proud of what I did," he admitted. "It was wrong. Unforgivable even. But now there are 2 children involved. My children. Please, Miguel, just let me see her, talk to her." The doctor ordered complete bed rest after today's fainting spell. "Come back tomorrow." It wasn't a definite no, and Lucas held on to that sliver of hope like a lifeline. "I'll be here at sunrise," he promised, determined. When Lucas returned the next day, it was Clara who greeted him, just as cold as her father and older sister had been. "Gabriella doesn't want to see you," she said firmly. "She told me if you truly love her, you'll respect her decision and give her space." Lucas felt the blow, but didn't give up, his resolve strengthening. He came back the next day and the next, and the one after that, persistent. Every day, a different family member met him with the same message. Gabriella didn't want to see him, but he kept coming. On the 5th day, when he arrived at the farm, he found Anna alone, carrying buckets of water for the plants, her face sweaty from the effort. "She still doesn't want to see me?" he asked, already expecting the usual answer. Anna set the buckets down, wiping sweat from her forehead with her arm. What do you think? You broke her heart into 1,000 pieces. She's not ready. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to fix that if she lets me. He looked around at the dry fields, the struggling crops. The drought's getting worse, isn't it? The land looks parched. Observant, aren't you? She replied with sarcasm, but there was fatigue in her voice. We've already lost half the crops. If it doesn't rain in the next few days, we'll lose everything. The farm we've worked so hard to maintain. Lucas hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I can help, Anna. I have resources. I can bring in irrigation systems, hire some extra hands to ease the burden. We don't want your money, she cut in, pride clear in her voice. We've been through tough times before. We'll get through it again on our own. It's not about the money, he said. It's about the babies, my children, and Gabriella, because I love her more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. Something in his eyes must have struck a chord with Anna because her expression softened just a bit, the edges blurring. Look, I don't agree with what you did. It was cruel and manipulative beyond words. But she sighed, seeming torn between loyalty and compassion. I also see how you've been coming here every day without fail. How you send those letters Gabriella pretends not to read, but keeps hidden in her dresser drawer, rereading them when she thinks no one's looking. A small flicker of hope lit up in Lucas's chest, warming him. She keeps my letters? Don't change the subject, Anna said, picking up the buckets again. If you really want to help, respect her space. Give it time. She needs to heal. Lucas nodded, taking the advice to heart. Still, he couldn't just walk away. Not when Gabriella was carrying his children in a high-risk pregnancy. Not when her family was struggling financially because of the drought. That's when he had an idea, a way to help indirectly without hurting their pride or pressuring Gabriella further. That very night, a violent storm hit the area unexpectedly. Strong winds howling, lightning cracking across the sky, hail pounding down like bullets. A perfect recipe for destruction and chaos. At dawn, the Oliveira family stepped outside to assess the damage, hearts sinking. Part of the house's roof had been torn off. One of the barn walls had collapsed entirely, and several pieces of farming equipment lay damaged and scattered. This is the end, Miguel muttered, looking devastated at the wreckage. There's no way we can afford to fix all this. It's too much. Just then, a truck appeared on the dirt road, followed by two more kicking up dust. The first one stopped in front of the house, and a middle-aged woman got out, wearing a t-shirt with the logo of a humanitarian organization. Oliveira family? She asked, checking a clipboard efficiently. We're from Helping Hands. We got word about the damage from last night's storm and came to help with the rebuilding efforts. Miguel frowned, confused and wary. We didn't call anyone, and we can't afford to pay for repairs right now. The woman smiled kindly, reassuring. No need to worry, sir. We're a non-profit organization. All materials and labor are donations from local businesses that care about small farmers affected by natural disasters like this. As she spoke, the other trucks began unloading wood, roofing materials, tools, and even a small generator for power. A team of about 20 people, all wearing the same NGO t-shirts, jumped down and started organizing for the job, efficient and professional. This seems a little too convenient, Anna commented, suspicious, her eyes narrowing. The woman just smiled wider. Sometimes luck turns around when you least expect it, doesn't it? And now, if you can show us the main areas of damage, we'll know where to start and get to work. The family, though hesitant at first, wasn't really in a position to turn down the help they so desperately needed. Slowly, they set aside their doubts and began working alongside the NGO crew, repairing the damage and even making improvements they never would have been able to afford on their own, like stronger reinforcements. What the Oliveira family didn't know was that Helping Hands had been created exactly 48 hours earlier, fully funded by Lucas Bennett with the sole purpose of helping that one farm without revealing his involvement, a quiet act of amends. As the rebuilding went on, Gabriella remained on strict bed rest, following the doctor's orders to the letter. Through the window of her room, she watched the activity in the yard, workers bustling. Her heart was torn between gratitude for the unexpected help that saved their home and suspicion that something more was going on behind the scenes. That same afternoon, she received a call from the clinic. Her test results showed her blood pressure was still dangerously high, and the doctor recommended immediate hospitalization for constant monitoring and care. "I can't go to the hospital," Gabriella protested over the phone, worry in her voice. "My family needs me here, and we can't afford a long hospital stay. It's too expensive." "Mrs. Oliveira, we're not just talking about your health, but your baby's lives," the doctor said firmly, urgent. "Preeclampsia is a serious condition that can lead to fatal complications if not managed. You need to come in today, no delays." Reluctantly, Gabriella agreed, packing a small bag. Clara drove her to the hospital that same afternoon, promising to visit every day without fail. What Gabriella didn't know was that upon arrival, she'd find a private suite waiting for her, with the best high-risk pregnancy specialist already assigned to her case. All of it quietly arranged by Lucas, his way of protecting her from afar. On the third day of her hospital stay, when her condition finally began to stabilize under careful care, Gabriella woke up in the middle of the night with a strange feeling that someone was in the room with her. She slowly opened her eyes and saw a figure sitting in the armchair next to her bed, holding her hand gently. It was Lucas. He hadn't noticed she was awake yet. His head was lowered, eyes closed as if he were praying silently. Silent tears ran down his face as he caressed her hand with tenderness. "Please be okay," he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "You and our babies. It's okay if you never forgive me. I just want you to be all right. I love you so much, Gabby. So much it hurts to breathe without you." Gabriella quickly closed her eyes again, pretending to still be asleep, her heart racing. Torn between the anger from his betrayal and the deep emotion of seeing the man she still loved so vulnerable, so truly remorseful, she lay there processing. Later, when the nurse came in to check her vitals, she casually asked if anyone had visited during the night. "Oh, yes, your husband," the nurse replied casually. "He's been coming every night since you were admitted. Always after visiting hours when everyone else is gone. He stays here holding your hand until morning, then leaves before you wake up, quiet as a mouse." "Every night?" Gabriella repeated, surprised and touched despite herself. "Yes, poor guy looks exhausted. I found him sleeping in that uncomfortable chair yesterday. I offered him some coffee, but he said no, didn't want to wake you with the smell." That night, Gabriella decided not to pretend to sleep when Lucas arrived. She waited patiently, and when he quietly entered the room around midnight, she greeted him with a simple, "Hi." Lucas froze at the door, clearly caught off guard, his eyes wide. "Gabby, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother you. I'll go right now." "No," she said, surprising herself with the softness in her voice. "Stay." Hesitant, he stepped closer to the bed, keeping a respectful distance, unsure. "How are you feeling? Better? Better?" "My blood pressure is under control now." She studied him for a moment, noting the fatigue. "You look tired, worn out." "I'm fine," he replied quickly, though the deep circles under his eyes told a different story, one of sleepless nights. An awkward silence fell between them, heavy with unsaid words. There was so much to say, so many open wounds from the past, neither knew where to start without reopening them. "The letters," Gabriella said finally, breaking the ice. "I read them all, every single one." "Really?" Lucas's eyes lit up with a spark of hope. "That doesn't mean I forgive you," she quickly clarified, setting boundaries. "What you did, it hurt me deeply, Lucas. You played with my feelings, with my whole family. It was devastating." "I know," he lowered his head, "and I'll spend the rest of my life regretting it, trying to make amends. Why have you been coming here every night?" "Because I can't stay away," he admitted, his voice unsteady with emotion. "Even knowing I don't deserve your forgiveness, even if we never get back what we had, I just need to know you and our babies are okay, safe." Gabriella rested her hand over her slightly rounded belly protectively. "So, you already know about the twins?" "Yes, the doctor called me when you passed out. It was a shock." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Gabby, I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but please let me be part of their lives. I want to be a present father.
I want to help in every way I can, support them.
And what about the mysterious nonprofit that showed up at the farm? Or this private hospital room that clearly cost more than my family could ever afford on our own? Lucas looked ashamed, caught. I couldn't just stand by and watch you and your family struggle through the drought and storm. I knew your pride wouldn't let you accept help directly from me. So you created a fake nonprofit and bribed the hospital, she said, shaking her head in disbelief. Always the powerful man trying to control everything and everyone behind the scenes. That's not how it was, he protested earnestly. I just wanted to help without pushing my way in, without making things harder for you. I wanted to respect your space and choices. Gabriella sighed, conflict clear on her face, torn. On one hand, the pain of his betrayal was still fresh, a wound not healed. On the other, it was impossible to ignore all the effort Lucas was making, the real remorse in his eyes and the love he still clearly felt, deep and true. I need time, Lucas, she finally said. Time to think, to heal, to decide what I want for me and for our children. I understand, he nodded, disappointment obvious in his voice but accepting. I'll respect that, but please know I'll be here, Gabby, waiting for as long as it takes, however long. He stood to leave, but stopped at the door, turning back one last time. And please don't turn down the help at the farm or here at the hospital. It's not for me. It's for the babies, for our children. With those words, he left, leaving Gabriella alone with her swirling thoughts and a heart that, despite itself, was slowly beginning to open to the possibility of forgiveness, a crack in the armor. What she didn't know was that as he was leaving the hospital that night, Lucas ran into Miguel in the lobby. That unexpected meeting led to a conversation that would change the course of their lives forever. Let's play a little game with the folks who only read the comments. Type Coca-Cola in the comments below. Only those who got this far will understand. Now let's get back to the story. There's more to reveal. Lucas hadn't expected to find Miguel at the hospital so late at night, much less have a meaningful, heart-to-heart conversation with him. But there they were, sitting in a quiet corner of the empty cafeteria, untouched cups of coffee in front of them, the fluorescent lights buzzing softly. Have you been sleeping here? Miguel asked, noticing Lucas's wrinkled clothes and unshaven face, signs of exhaustion. In the waiting room, Lucas replied, I want to be nearby in case something happens with Gabriella or the babies. Miguel studied his son-in-law for a long moment, tired eyes, slumped shoulders, not the image of the powerful CEO he'd read about in the papers after learning Lucas's true identity. What he saw was a broken man, genuinely worried and repentant. 3 nights sleeping in hospital chairs, Miguel said, shaking his head slowly. Why don't you go to a hotel?
I know you can afford the best one in town, with all the comforts.
Lucas rubbed his tired face. I can't stay away, and I don't deserve comfort when Gabriella is suffering because of me and my actions. Miguel took a sip of his coffee, thoughtful and measured. You know, when I found out what you did, I wanted to strangle you with my own hands, make you pay. I would have let you, Lucas replied with a small, sad smile, meaning it. What you did was unforgivable, Miguel continued, his tone firm but not aggressive. Lying, manipulating, playing with my daughter's feelings like that. I know, Lucas said, bowing his head, accepting the well-earned scolding without defense. But Miguel paused, his hardened expression softening just a little, empathy creeping in. Seeing you here night after night, sending that fake NGO to help with the farm without looking for recognition or credit, paying for Gabriella's best medical care without her even knowing.
I'm starting to think maybe there's more to you than I thought, a better man underneath.
Lucas looked at the older man, surprised by the small opening he was being given, a chance. I'm not the man I pretended to be when we met, Lucas admitted. But I'm also not the same man who planned that cruel scheme anymore. Gabriella and your family changed me, Miguel. You showed me values I never learned growing up in the cutthroat business world. Honesty, hard work, family first. Miguel nodded slowly, as if processing his words deeply. What do you want now, Lucas? Really from the bottom of your heart? I want a second chance, he answered without hesitation. I want to show Gabriella I can be the man she deserves, the partner she needs. I want to be the father of our children, a good father, and I want to be part of your family if you'll let me earn my place. Words are easy to say, Miguel said, though not as harshly as before. Then let me prove it with actions, Lucas leaned forward, sincere and earnest. I have a proposal not for Gabriella, but for you. Miguel raised his eyebrows, curious but guarded. What proposal? Let me live and work on the farm for a month. Not as the rich son-in-law, not as a CEO, but as a regular worker, no privileges, no money involved, just my hands and a willingness to learn and contribute. You leave your company for a month to work on a farm like a common laborer? I can manage the most urgent matters remotely, a few hours a week. The rest of the time, I'll just be another pair of hands helping out after the storm, proving myself. The older man considered the proposal for a few minutes, eyes locked on Lucas, gauging his sincerity and commitment. And Gabriella, would she agree to this? I don't know, Lucas admitted honestly. Probably not at first, but I'm not asking to come back as her husband. I just want the chance to show I've changed, that I've learned from my mistakes day by day. Miguel finished his coffee, deep in thought. When he finally spoke, his voice was firm but not hostile. 1 month then, hard work, no special treatment, and you follow my rules without complaint. A week later, Gabriella was discharged from the hospital. Her condition had stabilized enough to continue treatment at home as long as she rested and attended her follow-up appointments regularly. Clara came to pick her up, chatting excitedly about all the improvements on the farm, thanks to the mysterious NGO. They fixed the roof, rebuilt part of the barn, even installed a more efficient irrigation system, Clara explained, helping Gabriella into the car. And they brought drought-resistant seeds so we can replant what we lost. It's like a miracle. Gabriella simply nodded, fully aware where all that generosity had come from, suspecting Lucas's hand. During her time in the hospital, she'd had plenty of time to think about Lucas, about his lies, but also about his regrets and attempts to make things right, his nightly visits. Part of her still loved him. That was undeniable, a lingering flame. But could love really work without trust, without a foundation? As the car approached the farm, Gabriella immediately noticed the improvements. The house had fresh paint gleaming, the rebuilt barn looked sturdier than before, and the fields, though still recovering from the drought, now had a modern irrigation system in place, saving water. It looks like a different place, she said as Clara helped her out of the car, marveling. Wait until you see the inside of the house. They reinforced the floor, fixed all the leaks, even installed a solar water heating system, eco-friendly. Anna came out to greet them, hugging Gabriella carefully because of the growing belly. Welcome back, little sister. We missed you so much. Where's Dad? Gabriella asked, noticing the absence of their father, usually the first to welcome. The sisters exchanged quick glances, and an odd silence settled between them, tense. What is it? Did something happen to him? No, Anna quickly reassured her. He's fine. He's out in the north field checking the new crops with the new helper. Clara added, earning a disapproving look from Anna for spilling. What new helper? Gabriella asked, already suspicious, her instincts alert. Before the sisters could answer, the front door opened, and Miguel came in, smiling broadly as he saw his youngest daughter. My girl, finally home. He gave her a warm hug, careful not to squeeze too tight. But Gabriella noticed something different about his behavior, a certain nervousness that wasn't like him at all, evasive. What's going on, Dad? Clara mentioned a new helper. Who is it? Miguel cleared his throat, clearly uneasy but honest. Well, with you in the hospital and so much work to do after the storm, we needed an extra hand to keep things running. Just then, the door opened again, and Lucas walked in, carrying a toolbox, sweaty from work. He was almost unrecognizable, tan from the sun, his clothes covered in dirt and dust, hair messy, and hands rough from hard labor, transformed. He looked genuinely surprised to see Gabriella, as if he didn't know she was coming home that day. Gabby, he murmured, frozen in the doorway, toolbox dropping slightly. What's he doing here? Gabriella turned to her father, her voice shaking with emotion, anger, confusion, and something else she didn't want to admit, perhaps relief. He showed up a week ago, asked to work here, Miguel explained calmly. Said he wanted to prove he's changed, earn his way back. And you let him? After everything he did to me? To us? Everyone deserves a second chance, sweetheart, Miguel replied gently. And so far, he's been working harder than any of us. No complaints, no special treatment. He sleeps in the barn, gets up before sunrise, goes to bed after we all do. Gabriella looked at Lucas, who remained quiet, respecting her shock and outrage, not pushing. Her eyes picked up on things she hadn't noticed before. The calloused hands, even rougher than when he used to fake working on the farm. The sunburned face, the dark circles under his eyes from genuine exhaustion. Is this just another act? She asked him directly, her voice full of doubt and hurt. No, Lucas replied simply, his tone sincere. I'm here because I want to be. To learn, to help, to prove. Not with words, but with actions that I've changed. That I can be better for you, for us. Gabriella felt tears begin to form, but held them back, refusing to show weakness. You lied about everything before. How can I believe you now after all that? I'm not asking you to believe me right away, he said gently. I'm just asking for the chance to show you day by day that I'm worthy of your trust again, if you'll allow it. Anna, who had been watching the exchange carefully, stepped in. Gabby, I know it's hard for you to see him here. I didn't like it at first either. None of us did. But she paused, choosing her words. He really has been working hard, and he is the father of your babies. You're taking his side now? Gabriella asked, stunned and feeling betrayed. I'm on your side, Anna corrected firmly. Always. And maybe, just maybe, giving Lucas a chance to prove himself is what's best for you, too, for all of us, including the twins. Gabriella felt cornered, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions swirling inside. Part of her wanted to kick Lucas out of her life for good, close the door forever. Another part, a part that grew stronger each day, especially since learning she was pregnant, wanted to forgive him, to believe he really could change and be the man she once thought he was. I need to rest, she finally said, her voice tired and strained. The doctor said I need to stay off my feet as much as possible. Of course, Miguel quickly agreed. Lucas, finish fixing that fence and then check the irrigation system in the east field. Make sure it's working properly. Yes, sir, Lucas replied like any obedient employee, nodding. Before leaving, he looked at Gabriella one last time, his eyes saying everything his words couldn't: regret, hope, love. I'm glad you're home, Gabby. I hope you get better soon. After he left, Gabriella went to her room, which had been carefully prepared for her return. Fresh sheets, flowers on the nightstand, even a comfortable armchair placed by the window, perfect for the days of rest ahead. In the days that followed, Gabriella kept her distance from Lucas, watching him only from afar through her bedroom window, observing. She saw him working nonstop from sunrise to sunset, handling the toughest tasks without a single complaint, speaking respectfully with her father, and even laughing now and then with her sisters as they shared stories. Slowly, almost against her will, she began to notice subtle changes in him. It wasn't just his physical appearance, though the sun and hard work had clearly left their mark, sculpting him. There was something deeper, a genuine sense of humility, a gratitude for the simple things he once took for granted or dismissed. 1 week after she returned home while having breakfast in the kitchen, Gabriella overheard a conversation between Lucas and her father in the yard near the open window, their voices carrying. Why are you really doing this, Lucas? Miguel's voice was serious, questioning, probing. You could just use your money and influence to try and win Gabriella back or move on. Find someone else who fits your world. But instead, you came here working like a farmhand, sleeping on the barn floor. When I met Gabriella and your family, I was lost, Miguel. I had money, power, success in business, but I was empty inside, empty and cynical, always suspicious. Another pause, as if he was choosing his words carefully, baring his soul. The time I spent here during my deception, as wrong as it was the happiest I've ever been. Not because of luxuries, obviously, but because for the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere, to someone real. Your family showed me what unconditional love is, what honest work and integrity mean in practice. When Gabriella left me, I realized I'd thrown away the only truly valuable thing I ever had. And I saw that all my money meant nothing if I couldn't be the kind of man who deserves a woman like her. Kind, strong, true. His sincerity was clear, even from a distance, ringing true. Gabriella felt silent tears run down her face as she continued to listen, her heart softening. I'm here because I want to earn the right to be part of this family again, Lucas went on. Not because of what I can offer financially or through connections, but because of the man I believe I can become, the man you all helped me see in myself, the better version. That night, Gabriella couldn't sleep, tossing and turning. Lucas's words echoed in her mind along with memories of the happy moments they had shared, both during the deception and in the early days back in Chicago. Despite everything, he was right about one thing. Those moments had been real, and so had the love between them, undeniable. The next morning, she woke up with a sense of resolve, a decision made. She got dressed with care and went out to the yard where she knew Lucas would be starting his daily chores. He was fixing one of the fences, so focused on the task that he didn't notice her approach at first. Gabriella watched him for a moment, his muscles shaped by hard work, his hands callous, his face tanned from the sun. This man, who once ran a billion-dollar company from a luxury penthouse, now worked the land with the same dedication as her father, without complaint. We need to talk, she finally said, making her presence known, her voice steady. Lucas turned around, clearly surprised and nervous, wiping sweat from his brow. Gabby, good morning. Of course we can talk, whenever you're ready. She motioned toward a bench under a nearby tree, and they walked there in silence, the air thick with anticipation. They sat side by side, leaving a respectful space between them. Why are you really here, Lucas? She asked, getting straight to the point. And don't give me the thoughtful answer you gave my father. I want the simple truth, no embellishments. Lucas took a deep breath, looking at her with intensity and honesty. I'm here because I love you. Because I love our children, even though they haven't been born yet, and because I want to be worthy of that love, to earn it every day. Gabriella nodded slowly, as if the answer confirmed something she had already suspected deep down. You know this won't be easy. I trusted you once with all my heart, and you broke that trust in a calculated, painful way. I know, he said, not trying to defend himself or make excuses. And I understand that I might never fully earn your trust back, but I'm willing to try for as long as it takes, without pressure. She looked down at her growing belly, feeling the first gentle movements of the babies, a reminder of the future. I'm not doing this just for me anymore. I have to think about them too, their well-being. Of course, Lucas nodded, following her gaze. They deserve to have both parents in their lives if possible. But I understand if you decide I can't be part of your life, Gabby. If that's the case, I'll respect your decision, though I'll never stop trying to be the best father I can be for our children from wherever I am. Gabriella remained silent for a long moment, weighing all the possibilities, all the conflicting feelings in her heart, fear, hope, love. At last she made a decision, her voice soft but firm. One step at a time, she said. I can't promise we'll go back to what we were. I can't even promise that I'll ever fully forgive you. But, Lucas asked, hope clearly visible in his eyes, tentative. But I'm willing to try. For me, for our children, and maybe, just maybe, for us as a family. The smile that lit up Lucas's face was sincere, full of gratitude and relief, transforming him. He hesitantly reached out his hand to her, and after a moment of hesitation, Gabriella accepted it, letting their fingers gently intertwine a small bridge. That's all I ask, he said, his voice thick with emotion. A chance to prove every day that the man you met on the farm, the one who worked the land, who loved his family, who married you believing he had nothing, that man is real. He always was. Gabriella felt something break and come together again inside her. Not the old naive trust she once had, but something new, something stronger, forged through pain and forgiveness, a new beginning rising from the ashes. Then prove it, she gently challenged, squeezing his hand lightly. Day by day. And that's exactly what Lucas began to do, committing fully. The weeks that followed were a time of rebuilding, not just the farm damaged by the storm and drought, but also the fragile relationship between Lucas and Gabriella, mending piece by piece. Step by step, day by day, they walked a difficult path of forgiveness and rebuilding trust, navigating carefully. Lucas stayed in the barn, respecting the space Gabriella needed to heal, not pushing for more. He continued working hard on the farm, not just to prove his worth, but because he had truly come to love the life, the honest work under the sun, the satisfaction of watching crops grow through his effort, the simple meals shared with family after a long day, full of stories and laughter. Gabriella, in turn, watched his transformation with a mix of caution and growing hope. Little by little, she allowed small moments of closeness, a conversation over dinner about their day, a walk around the farm at sunset, and eventually she even let Lucas feel the baby's kicking when he placed his hand on her growing belly, sharing the wonder. "They're strong," Lucas said, moved by the feeling, tears glistening in his eyes. "Just like their mother, resilient and full of life." It was during this time of cautious reconnection that Gabriella finally asked about Summit Innovations, curiosity winning. "How's your company? Shouldn't you be there, running things?" "I named Marcos as acting CEO," Lucas explained. "He handles the day-to-day operations while I stay in touch with the big decisions remotely. The hostile takeover attempt was blocked successfully." "You gave all that up to stay here?" "I didn't give it up," he replied honestly. "I just changed my priorities, found what really matters. The Lucas you met here on the farm discovered values the CEO of Summit never understood. Balance, family." That conversation marked a turning point, a shift. Gabriella began to realize that the change in Lucas wasn't an act, but a genuine transformation, deep and lasting. One particularly hot afternoon, while resting on the porch as ordered by her doctor to avoid strain, Gabriella felt a sharp pain in her belly, sudden and intense. She tried to ignore it at first, but as it grew worse, fear took over, gripping her. "Lucas!" she cried out, frightened, her voice carrying across the yard. He dropped his tools in the field and ran to her immediately, concern etched on his face. Seeing her pale and in pain, he didn't hesitate for a second. "We're going to the hospital now, no arguments." On the way, Gabriella had light bleeding, adding to the panic. Lucas drove as fast as he could safely, one hand on the wheel, the other holding hers tightly. "It's going to be okay," he repeated like a mantra, though his face showed pure fear and worry. "Our babies are strong, just like you. They'll fight." At the emergency room, Gabriella was taken for tests right away, wheeled off. Lucas stayed in the waiting room, devastated by the thought of losing his children before even meeting them, pacing. Hours later, the doctor came with news, his expression relieved. "Fortunately, we've stabilized the situation, but Mrs. Oliveira will need to stay in the hospital under constant monitoring until the end of the pregnancy. The next 2 months are critical. Bed rest here." Lucas nodded, taking in the information, grateful. "Can I see her?" Gabriella was lying in bed, connected to monitors tracking her and the baby's heartbeats, steady beeps filling the room. She looked small and vulnerable in the hospital bed, but her eyes brightened when she saw him. "The babies are fine," she said when she saw him, tears of relief running down her face. "But I have to stay here until the delivery. It's safer." Lucas sat beside her, holding her hand gently. "I'll be with you every second. You're not alone." "You can't. You have the farm, the company to manage." "Nothing else matters now," he said firmly, resolute. "My place is here, with you and our family," and he kept that promise faithfully. Over the next 2 months, Lucas practically lived at the hospital. He slept in the chair beside Gabriella's bed, only leaving for quick showers and to handle urgent business calls from afar. He brought photos of the farm to brighten the room, read aloud to her and the babies from books, sharing stories. Miguel and the sisters took turns visiting, bringing homemade meals and news from the farm, their support unwavering. On one of those visits, Miguel found Lucas asleep in the chair, clearly exhausted after 3 days without leaving. "Never thought I'd say this," the old farmer said when Lucas woke up, his voice gruff but approving. "But you really do love her, don't you?" "More than my own life," Lucas replied, his voice hoarse from tiredness. "I think you've proven your worth, son, through actions." Those words meant more to Lucas than any $1 million contract he'd ever signed, a true validation. The final stage of Gabriella's pregnancy was delicate, and she had to stay in the hospital. But Lucas turned the cold clinical room into a cozy space, bringing personal items, photos, even plants to make it more bearable and homelike. One night, while they were watching a movie on the small hospital TV, Gabriella asked a question she had been avoiding for months.
What if we went back to Chicago after the babies are born? Split time, maybe?
Lucas turned to her, surprised but hopeful. You consider that? I've been thinking a lot, she said, gently rubbing her large belly. The farm will always be my home, my roots, but you have a business to run, and maybe it's time to bring our two worlds together instead of choosing one over the other. Find a balance. Lucas felt overwhelmed with emotion, tears welling. Are you really giving me a second chance? I'm giving us a second chance, she said softly, but on one condition. Anything. Total honesty always. No more lies, not even the ones meant to protect me or spare feelings. I promise, Lucas said with conviction, taking her hands. Complete transparency for the rest of our lives. At that moment, Gabriella's face twisted in pain suddenly. Lucas, I think it's time. The contractions. 26 hours later, after a long labor, Miguel and Clara Bennett were born, healthy and crying, despite the complications during pregnancy. When the nurse placed the twins in his arms for the first time, Lucas cried openly, overwhelmed by the miracle of life, the tiny bundles. They're perfect, he whispered, looking at their tiny faces, each one a mix of his and Gabriella's features. Just like you, a miracle. The whole family came to meet the new arrivals. Miguel, moved by the grandchildren who carried his and his late wife's names, tears in his eyes. Anna and Clara, thrilled with their new niece and nephew cooing. In the weeks that followed, Lucas proved to be a devoted father, changing diapers with care, preparing bottles at all hours, comforting them during sleepless nights with patience. The man who once barely took care of himself now showed endless dedication to his family. When it was time to leave the hospital, the question of where to go was important, discussed at length. After many conversations, they reached a compromise. They would spend a few months at the farm so Gabriella could fully recover and the babies could grow up close to nature and family. Later, they would split their time between Chicago and the farm, blending worlds.
But Lucas had a surprise plan, something special.
When they arrived at the farm, Gabriella noticed a new building near the main road, modern yet fitting. What's that? Lucas smiled, not giving anything away. Just an idea I had. Want to take a look inside? As they got closer, Gabriella saw a beautiful rustic building with an elegant sign at the entrance, Gabby's Artisan Bakery. What is this? She asked, emotional, tears welling. Your dream, Lucas replied. A bakery of your own, right next to the farm, fully equipped for you to create your culinary wonders and share them. Gabriella stepped inside, amazed by the mix of modern equipment and rustic charm. Industrial ovens, marble counters for rolling dough, elegant display cases for her creations, even a small cafe area for customers to sit and enjoy. I started the project while you were in the hospital, he explained. Your father and sisters helped oversee everything, adding touches. The idea is to build a business that highlights the farm's products and your talent as a chef. Maybe we could run it together as partners. Together? Gabriella looked surprised. What about Summit? Lucas took a deep breath. I made a decision while you were in the hospital. I'm stepping down as CEO permanently. Marcos will do a better job than I ever could. He's ready. You give up everything you built? Why? Because I found something more valuable, he answered simply. I almost lost you and our children because of my pride and obsession with power. I'm not going to make that mistake again. Family first. In that moment, Gabriella knew this was the real Lucas, not the arrogant billionaire, not the remorseful pretender, but a man who had finally understood the true meaning of success and happiness, transformed. Welcome to our new life, she said with a smile, pulling him into a kiss that sealed not just their reconciliation, but a brand new beginning. Full of promise point 1 year later, Gabby's Sweets had become a regional sensation, drawing crowds. People drove for hours just to try Gabriella's famous cakes, now improved with techniques she had learned in the culinary school she had finally finished, graduating with honors. Lucas had discovered a surprising talent for small business management, using his corporate experience in a more personal, thoughtful way, handling finances and marketing. Together, they created a model that not only made a profit, but also supported local products and gave jobs to people in the community, giving back. The twins, now 1-year-old, were growing up strong and healthy, full of energy. Surrounded by a loving extended family, they split their time between the simple, cozy home they had built near the farm and occasional visits to Chicago, where Lucas still kept an eye on Summit from afar. Under Marcos's leadership, the company had become even more ethical and sustainable, thriving. On a sunny Sunday morning, friends and family gathered at the bakery, decorated with flowers and ribbons in a festive display. It was the day of Lucas and Gabriella's vow renewal, a celebration not of the rushed wedding built on lies, but of the true love they had built through hard times, resilient. Miguel walked Gabriella down the aisle, set up between the tables laden with treats. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, holding a bouquet of wildflowers from the fields. Lucas stood at the front, holding the twins in his arms, his face glowing with happiness and gratitude. When the time came for the vows, Lucas handed the babies to Anna and Clara and took Gabriella's hands tenderly. A year ago, I was a lost man, looking in all the wrong places for what I thought was happiness, power, wealth, he began, his voice steady. I tried to test you, but in the end, I was the one who was tested, and I failed, then learned. I promise that every day we live together will be based on complete honesty. I will never hide who I truly am again, the man you helped me discover, better because of you. Gabriella smiled through tears of joy. A year ago, I thought I had lost everything when I found out about your lie. But today, I know that was just the beginning of our real story, the foundation. I promise to keep believing in the best of you, just like you now believe in the best of yourself. After exchanging rings, simple bands symbolizing their commitment, Gabriella made one last announcement that no one expected. And to complete our happiness, it looks like Miguel and Clara are going to have a little brother or sister soon. The news was met with cheers, emotional hugs, and joyful tears. With tears in his eyes, Lucas held Gabriella and the twins close, feeling finally complete, whole. What did you think of Lucas and Gabriella's story? Let us know in the comments below. On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all of our stories. And be sure to check out more emotional stories by clicking here on the final screen. There's always more inspiration waiting.